I shot a police officer, and I was in jail waiting for my trial.
There was no question that he was going to face the death penalty.
My only chance at staying alive was to escape. I had to get over the wall in the rec area or dig my way out of the cell.
There's never been an inmate that ever got out by digging through the walls.
This is a true story.
I'd need to use the limited materials we were given and my skills as a construction worker.
It's a dramatized account based on the escapee's own recollections and legal documents.
I had to keep calm. This was my one chance.
I've never seen an escape like this before. It's brilliant.
Come on, son, with your hands up!
I honestly felt somebody would end up killing John Parsons in a shootout.
My name is John Parsons. In April 2005, I was paying child support for 3 children. I was under extreme amounts of stress, so I turned to crime. Soon after, I found myself in a chase, leaving a robbery scene.
I've known John for many years. He just progressed into more serious crimes. He was getting more violent, and he could be capable of just about anything. Officer Cox was just returning home, visiting his parents, and their paths crossed.
I didn't even realize it was a police officer. When I looked back and I seen the man fall down and I realized I'd shot him, I was in a state of panic and shock. And I instantly felt sick and terrified.
Words just can't express the feeling for the loss of Larry Cox. He's just one officer that I'll never be able to replace.
This would have been the first personal, close contact friend of mine that had ever been killed in the line of duty. So, I wasn't ready for it, to be honest with you. It just shocked me.
I was arrested, and now I was in jail, waiting to be put on trial for the murder of Officer Larry Cox.
Empty his pockets.
And I knew it was a trial I couldn't win.
Spread him.
If you kill a police officer in the performance of his duties, you are going to face the death penalty.
I could get life in prison, but I was pretty sure I'd be sentenced to death. I felt I had nothing to lose. My only chance of staying alive was to somehow escape before my trial. But they put me in isolation, where I'd have no chance to escape.
Our county jail that we've built here in Ross County is just as secure as any prison. In many cases, it's probably more secure.
Every day was a struggle to fight off slipping into deep depression and self-pity. I felt like a lot of people I cared for did or even should hate me. But I had to stay focused on getting out of solitary and planning my escape. Legally, they weren't able to keep me in isolation without a reason. So I figured if I acted like a model inmate,
Time's up.
they would eventually let me into the general population.
Whatever you say, boss.
And then I could begin to plan my escape.
John Parsons was very skillful at concealing, or what we call using a duck blind. He was trying to use his personality to get people to believe that he was trying to follow all the rules.
Thanks, boss.
And it lowers your ability to suspect him of something that's illegal.
He stayed in there for several months, and he was very polite, never a problem in prison. So the prosecuting attorney at that time and the judges, they said, why don't you just go ahead and move him back in the general population? Well, I didn't really want to do that, but there was nothing to show that he was causing an issue.
Parsons, moving you to general.
So we moved him back into the general population.
I'd kept my cool, and it had paid off. Apart from being locked in my cell at night, I could pretty much move around the pod as I wished. And now I was able to join the other prisoners for outdoor recreation.
On days the weather's not bad, we can take the inmates outside into the rec area. However, the standing order still stood that when he had his rec time, he wasn't supposed to be with the other inmates.
My trial date was just 3 or 4 months away. I needed to plan my escape seriously and put it into action immediately. I thought maybe I could find a way to escape from the rooftop recreation area. But the wall itself presented a huge challenge. I judged it to be about 18 feet tall. Then open air, protected by a fence and 2 rolls of razor wire. It looked intimidating. So I decided to continue to ponder it while I tried to find an alternative.
They keep y'all locked up here too?
John was able to manipulate people and was a polite individual.
And what crimes y'all commit?
But he also had that mean side of him inside that robs people and threatens people. He'd be like a Jekyll and Hyde.
All the cells had a small window on the exterior wall. If I could somehow get through that wall, I would be outside. Then I could drop down to a lower section and run to a steep tin roof. From there, I would drop 15 or 20 feet into an alley that ran along beside the jail.
John wasn't a dumb person. You know, he could have made something out of his life, putting his talents or mind to more constructive areas within the community. But he chose the road as a criminal.
Before I could even consider how to start digging around the cinder blocks, I needed to solve the challenge of how to cover up my work quickly.
Head count.
Because they did head counts 4 or 5 times a day.
Okay, the head count gives us an opportunity to check the inmates. We'd have the inmates stand still. The officer comes through, check each inmate, do a visual inspection of the cell block, and then go to the next cell block.
I needed to create some kind of mortar that would look just like the real thing. Before I turned to crime, I used to work in construction, so I figured I could come up with something that would work. I'd have to use the materials that they gave us. Mixing toothpaste and talcum powder was a good place to start.
You got any mint-flavored toothpaste?
Nah, we got what we got.
I don't claim to be a genius, but I do think I'm smarter than a lot of people in the jail with me. Or maybe I just put more thought into things than a lot of them would. Most people you deal with in jail don't seem to think too much before acting. I finally got the right texture. But it wouldn't dry. And it was definitely the wrong color. I was stumped.
Okay.
Slam. Can't have me too. No.
One day I was watching the other inmates play cards, using Jolly Ranchers as chips. And then I hit on it. If I could get enough blue and green candies, I could melt them together and maybe get a match for the color of the cell wall. I put the Jolly Ranchers and toothpaste in a baggie and ran hot water over it constantly. Then I kneaded it together to dissolve the Jolly Ranchers into the toothpaste. I started telling other inmates those were the only candies I liked. and I made deals with them to get me more. Now I had my mortar, I needed a tool, so I could begin to dig through the wall. The metal louver slats in the air vents were about 5 inches long, welded in place at both ends, and I couldn't do much more than bend them a little with my bare hands. So I used one of the hard plastic mugs that our milk was served in at breakfast. I was ready to start digging. I had no idea how long it was going to take. I just hoped I'd be finished before my trial.
Inspection.
This is a dramatized account of a prison break based on letters from escapee John Parsons. He's attempting to dig through his cell wall when he's interrupted.
I was scared that the deputy would inspect more closely and notice where I'd been digging. I didn't want to come that close to being caught ever again. I decided to start digging real soon after a head count, so that they weren't likely to come in again real soon. I could only afford to work for about half an hour, then hurry to fill it in. At this rate, I wasn't even sure if I'd be finished before my trial started in a couple of months. Because progress was so slow, I decided to stay behind when the other inmates went to recreation, so I could spend more time working on the wall.
You coming?
I pretended I was working on my case. Nobody questioned me normally. They gave me my space.
We never had an inmate since I was sheriff. There's never been an inmate since the facility was built that ever got out by digging through the walls.
Pretty soon after I started digging, I encountered a problem. There was some thick, heavy gauze wire mesh between the cinder blocks. I already had blisters and sore spots on my hand. And then I discovered that some of the holes that went through the center of the cinder blocks were poured solid with concrete. I filled those areas back in and moved to the next block over.
Okay, so tell me what they put in here.
Sometimes the stress was almost unbearable. I was either going to get the death penalty, spend the rest of my life in prison, or escape and live in hiding for the rest of my life. I always tried to block it out and not think too much about it if possible, by trying to stay focused on my plan. I was finally making headway, but this gave me a new problem. My tool was too short. To dig deeper, I'd have to find a way to splice the slats together into a longer tool. I couldn't see anything that would do it in commissary, but I did pick up some other things I thought would come in handy. Then I took a look at the cleaning supplies. I noticed the brooms had steel tie wire wrapped around them where the straw bristles were attached to the wooden handle. I used the tie wire to splice some slats together, lapping over each other an inch or so. Then I bent one end into an L shape for a handle to make it easier on my hands. Now I had a tool that I could use like a drill, and the digging went much quicker after that. I realized I'd have to backfill the holes with something to keep from having to fill it entirely with my limited mix of toothpaste. So I made sticks of paper mache using toilet paper, wetting it, shaping it, and letting it dry. Finally, a month after I'd started, I dug enough to get the cinder block loose. I pulled it out. I could see a layer of red brick, and I knew that on the other side of that layer was freedom. But after the new paint job, some of the deputies became a lot more prickly about any specks of dirt on the walls. Deputy Miller was a new deputy. He seemed to be really picky and prissy about anything being dusty or dirty. One day he came around early.
Inspection.
And the little 1-inch wide hole I'd just made and patched in was still kind of wet and had a bit of dust from the mortar on it.